How to regain a sense of mastery when one rejects shame as a strategy? How to regain a sense of mastery, an internal locus of control, when one feels helpless all the time, the plaything of malevolent, malicious, wicked, evil forces, the victim of circumstances and people and environments and institutions? How, in this narrative, can one at the same time claim to be godlike, masterful, in control? On the one hand, if you are the victim of evil people, then you are not in control. You are not the master, and you're definitely not godlike. Victims are not godlike. Victimhood is the exact opposite of divinity. So how to square the circle? How to restore a sense of mastery as a victim? How to leverage helplessness to regain control and to restore the grandiose, inflated, fantastic, self-enhancing perception as godlike? Contempt is the answer. Contempt is a way to project the shame, to project the helplessness onto other people. Contempt is, as I said, I'm going to repeat this, it's very important. Contempt is the narcissist's projected shame. Contempt is the narcissist's projected helplessness. They ought to be ashamed of themselves. They are contemptible. They are inferior. So by adopting contempt as the overriding effect, the narcissist squares the circle. On the very contrary, I'm helpless because I'm being victimized. I'm the victim. But the people who are victimizing me, they should be ashamed of themselves. They are inferior. They are contemptible morally, intellectually, and so on. I hold them in disdain. I'm disgusted by them. And by saying this, by deploying this narrative, the narcissist restores a sense of superiority, restores a sense of mastery and control. Because if you're surrounded by midgets and you're the only Gulliver, it's not your fault. Nothing is your fault. If you are misunderstood, discriminated against, envied, it's not your fault. Nothing is your fault. They should be ashamed. You have nothing to be ashamed of. And your helplessness is simply the outcome of the inferiority of people around you, of their shortcomings, of their envy, of their deficiencies, and of their moral turpitude. They're the ones who are stingy and impetuous and envious and destructive and hateful. They're the ones. You're just there, superior and august, morally and intellectually. You're helpless. You're helpless against the horde. You're helpless against the crowd and the mob of people besieging you, attempting to take you down. It's not much to do. But you're never ashamed. And you're definitely superior. Contempt is not the same as grandiosity. Grandiosity is motivational. Grandiosity motivates you to act. In order to sustain, maintain, preserve, buttress, and augment your grandiosity, you have to do things. For example, you have to be disgusted by them. And by saying this, by deploying this narrative, the narcissist restores a sense of superiority, restores a sense of mastery and control. Because if you're surrounded by midgets and you're the only Gulliver, it's not your fault. Nothing is your fault. If you are misunderstood, discriminated against, envied, it's not your fault. Nothing is your fault. They should be ashamed. You have nothing to be ashamed of. And your helplessness is simply the outcome of the inferiority of people around you, of their shortcomings, of their envy, of their deficiencies, and of their moral turpitude. They're the ones who are stingy and impetuous and envious and destructive and hateful. They're the ones. You're just there, superior and august, morally and intellectually. You're helpless. You're helpless against the horde. You're helpless against the crowd and the mob of people besieging you, attempting to take you down. It's not much to do. But you're never ashamed. And you're definitely superior. Contempt is not the same as grandiosity. Grandiosity is motivational. Grandiosity motivates you to act. In order to sustain, maintain, preserve, buttress, and augment your grandiosity, you have to do things. For example, you have to coerce people to provide you with narcissistic supply. You have to behave in highly constricted, well-defined ways. Grandiosity generates behavioral scripts. Grandiosity is also a cognitive distortion. It's a misperception of reality, a reframing of it, a falsification of the world. Grandiosity is a narrative within which you are godlike. The narcissist, grandiosity, is godlike, is perfect, a perfect entity. And grandiosity is motivational because it generates, as I said, behavioral scripts. It dictates behaviors. Whereas contempt is not motivational, is attitudinal. Contempt is inert. The narcissist holds everybody in contempt, but it doesn't motivate him to do anything. That is distinct from the psychopath. The psychopath holds everyone in contempt, and this motivates the psychopath to harm people, to damage people, to take advantage of people. So in psychopathy, contempt is motivational, not attitudinal. In psychopathy. Whereas in psychopathy, the grandiosity is attitudinal. Psychopathy in this sense is a mirror image of narcissism. In narcissism, grandiosity is motivational. It motivates the narcissist to act in certain ways in order to sustain and preserve the grandiose view of himself and to self-enhance. Whereas in narcissism, contempt is attitudinal. I hold everyone in contempt, but it doesn't mean that I have to do something about it, says the narcissist. Whereas in psychopathy, it's exactly the reverse. In psychopathy, the grandiosity is attitudinal. I'm superior to everyone. Everyone is stupid. That's an attitude. Whereas the contempt in psychopathy is motivational. The contempt is the affect that drives the psychopath to harm and take advantage of people. In narcissism, in pathological narcissism, grandiosity is about uniqueness, not about superiority. Grandiosity is about being special, one of a kind, sui generis, not about being superior. For example, the narcissist could feel grandiose as a victim. The narcissist could feel grandiose as someone who has failed spectacularly. Grandiosity is about the spectacle, not about feeling superior. Many narcissists use their inferiority, their failures, their defeats, their checkered history, they use this, they leverage their own self-perceived victimhood. They leverage their inferiority in order to render themselves unique and special. And this is their locus of grandiosity, their inferiority. In other words, narcissists can feel grandiose for being uniquely inferior, uniquely victimized, unique failures, uniquely defeated, and so on. And that is the seat of grandiosity in these specific narcissists. Whereas contempt is not about uniqueness. It is not about being special, like grandiosity. Grandiosity is about being special and unique. Contempt is about being superior to others. Contempt is a haughty sense of superiority over other people who are perceived as in some way or some ways inferior. So grandiosity is about being special or unique. Contempt is about being superior. And they're not the same. They're not the same. If the locus of grandiosity also happens to be superiority. In other words, if the narcissist's way of self-enhancing is via displays, ostentatious displays of superiority, if the narcissist's narrative or way of thinking is that I'm special and unique because I'm superior, then contempt can contribute to the buttressing, preservation, and enhancement of the grandiosity. Contempt can contribute to the falsification of reality, the impairment of reality testing. But if the grandiosity is about being inferior, contempt has nothing to do with it. Contempt will preserve some kind of a sense of superiority. Ironically, sometimes contempt can mean I'm superior for my inferiority, like no one has been victimized the way I have been victimized. That renders me superior and all other victims inferior. No one has failed the way I have failed spectacularly. My failure was headline news. My failure was all over the media. My failure is being taught in university business administration classes and so on. That's my failure. So in that case, the contempt would be reserved for people who have failed less than the narcissist, in a lesser way. So contempt is malleable. The sense of superiority is linked to the grandiose narrative. But grandiosity in itself is not necessarily about superiority. Grandiosity can revolve around unique and special and unprecedented inferiority. And the contempt then would still retain a sense of superiority. And when it is linked with the grandiosity, it would be the superiority of one's own inferiority. You see how convoluted narcissism is. And when self-styled experts and even scholars bandy about all kinds of observations, I'm sorry to say, but in most cases, they have no idea what they're talking about. Because very few people on earth understand narcissism, pathological narcissism, intimately. I think to some extent, it takes introspection as well as observation. And in this sense, scholars who are also narcissistic or scholars who are narcissists, they have an insurmountable advantage over scholars who are healthy, normal people. And we should listen to the first group and discount to a large extent